Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at the second part of Chapter 8, Section 5, where we're going to actually talk about solving equations. Now, you remember how to solve equations. We always do the opposite operations backwards through PEMDAS. And we're looking at equations that have an exponent of 2. So they're often going to be written in the form ax squared plus bx equals 0. Alright, so let's get started. Let's first talk about how we solve an equation. I know you all need a quick reminder. So if I have 2x minus 5 equals 11, remember I go backwards through PEMDAS. I'm going to add 5 to both sides, and that will give me 2x equals 16. And then I need to divide both sides by 2, and that gives me x equals 8. Let's take a look at these next two examples. These both have exponents, but they're written in a way that we could still solve it. Let's think about x squared equals 49. What could x be? Well, remember the opposite of something squared is taking the square root. So that would give me my x all by itself. So the square root of 49 could be either positive or negative 7. And I could check my answer. Negative 7 squared is 49, or 7 squared is 49. Try the second one. What would you do first? Remember, backwards through PEMDAS. We're going to deal with the exponent last. So I would need to add 1 to both sides. That would give me x squared equals 81. And then I would take the square root of both sides. That would give me x equals 9. But not just 9, positive or negative 9. Alright, so we come to the type of equation that we need to try to learn how to solve today. Now, you all might think that you could solve this. In fact, I encourage you to try, based on your knowledge, to solve it. Some of you might say, well, let's subtract 4y from both sides. Yep, you can do that. And then you might say, divide both sides by negative 4. Okay, we can do that. Then we get y equals 3y squared. Now what do? I can't take the square root of that because there's a 3 there. I could subtract y, but then I kind of end up where I was. So you really don't have any options here because you can't combine like terms here in the beginning because there are no like terms. So we're going to use a new method that I'm going to teach you today, and we'll come back to this problem in a minute and we'll think about how we can solve it better. So what I first want to talk to you about is the idea of a times b equals 0. We need to understand this in order to be able to solve these types of problems. So if a times b equals 0, then what do I know about a or about b? When I multiply two things together, how do I get 0? Well, as you notice from all these examples, I have to have a 0. The only way to get a 0 for an answer is if one of these is a 0. So if a times b equals 0, then a equals 0 or b equals 0. Phew! Gesundheit. Alright, so this is called the zero product property, and it's going to become your new best friend. I will often abbreviate as the ZPP, the zero product property. So make sure you get that written in your notes. Super, super important. Alright, so we're going to solve an equation first using this zero product property idea. And then we're going to look at an equation where it's similar to what we had in the warm-up. Okay, so looking at letter A first, I essentially here have a number times a number equals 0. So that's the zero product property. I have something times something is equal to 0. So that means that either x minus 2 needs to be equal to 0, or 4x minus 1 needs to be equal to 0. One of those two cases has to equal 0 in order for that solution to happen. So I've got two possibilities for what x could be. So now all I have to do is solve. X could be 2. Or x could be 1/4. All right, now let's talk about checking our solutions. Let's see that we understand this for real. I'm going to use the space below and I'll erase it when we get to the next problem. So if I want to check to see if x equals 2 is going to work, I need to plug in as each of those x's a 2. So 2 minus 2 times 4 times 2 minus 1 should equal 0. 2 minus 2 is 0. 4 times 2 is 8. Minus 1 is 7. 0 times 7. Does that equal 0? You betcha. Let's try 1/4. 1/4 minus 2. And 4 times 1/4 minus 1. 1/4 minus 2 is an ugly fraction that's going to give us negative 1 3/4 times 4 times 1/4 is 1 minus 1 is 0. And is something times 0 0? Yes, it is. So this method has worked. We have found the possible values for x. X could either be 2 or 1/4. All right, so let's go a step further then. Let's look at letter B. I've got 40y equals 8y squared. Now the way that we're going to be able to solve this is by using the zero product property. So in order to use the zero product property, I have to have a number times a number equals 0. So the very first thing I'm going to do is make it equal 0. So how am I going to make it equal 0? Well, I could either subtract 40y or I could subtract 8yx. I'm going to subtract 40y from both sides. That gives me 0 equals 8y squared minus 40y. So now it equals 0. The second thing I need to do is make it something times something. And the way I'm going to be able to do that is by factoring. So when I look at this equation, I'm only going to look at this part right here. What do each of those pieces have in common? What can I factor out? Well, I have a GCF of, not just 4y, 8y. So 0 equals greatest common factor on the outside of parentheses. 8y squared divided by 8y gives us y. Negative 40 divided by 8 gives us negative 5, and the y has disappeared. Now I have a number times a number. Look, a number times a number. So now I use the zero product property, the ZPP, and I say either 8y equals 0 or y minus 5 equals 0. And my possible solutions then become y equals 0 or y equals 5. And I could go back and check, and I would find out that it works. So after I factor, the next step is to use the zero product property and the final step is to solve. Of course, you should always check, but I can't make you do that. Let's try a couple more for practice. Pause the video and give them each a try. So we're going to go right ahead. We've got a thing times a thing. So we can go straight into the zero product property here. And split into our two separate equations. Then we solve. S equals 3, or S equals -2. Two possible solutions. If I plug them in, I will find out that both of them will work. Try the second one. So in this case, we need to go back to our steps. Remember, first we need to have something times something, and we don't here. But it does equal 0, so we don't have to move anything around. So we're going to look at our numbers and see what our greatest common factor is. So I put 5x on the outside. 5x divided by 5x is 1. 40 divided by 5 is 8x. Now I have something times something, and so I can use the zero product property and I can solve. I divide both sides by 5, x equals 0, or subtract 1. Oops, that's an ugly negative. Divide both sides by -8. So x could equal 1/8. Those are my two possible options to solve that equation. Now, something interesting you're going to start picking up on is when you have an x squared equation, there will always be two answers. If you have just an x equals with no exponent, you're going to have one answer. These are linear equations. They have one solution. These are quadratic equations, and they have two solutions. All right, homework. 6 problems, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Good luck.